This video is sponsored by Freely Give. If you want help with Drupal and AI, that intersection, please get in contact with us. I work there and we have a lot of people that's even smarter than me that can help you with Drupal and AI. So we're gonna talk about this thing today, Drupal CMS, its agents and how we can test them. So as you might know, we have updated the AI agents framework and also the AI module to use tool calling now. So tool calling is part of the whole AI framework in 1.1 that's gonna be released soon. But one of the blockers that existed was to actually verify that the new agents that we're gonna use, that are configuration agents, actually works as well or better than the agents that we used to use. And what we have done to be able to test this is we have created a module called AI Agents Test that can actually test the AI agents functionality. We can do regression testing with this. We can also test performance and stability of the LLM part. So the good thing with the new function calling method then is that it's very split up between the deterministic tool, the deterministic code. I mean, that is a tool that is just a plugin system in Drupal that you can test as you test anything else with unit testing, kernel testing, and so on, to see if I give these parameters into this tool, does it actually do what it's supposed to do? And the LLM layer that is supposed to call it and might have to call it in hierarchy, where you have one then Drupal agent chatbot, as we call it in this case, that might talk to a field agent, for instance, when it needs to create a field, or to a taxonomy agent when it needs to create a taxonomy. And this in its turn is then actually using tools to manipulate the Drupal website or get information. If you want to know more about the new agents framework, I'm gonna link it in this video. So if you haven't heard about this, it makes sense to look at that video before, because I will not go into detail what we have changed here, how you set up by agents and so on. This will only be about testing, and it's gonna be split up in at least 4 parts. There will be chapters in this video, so you can go to each of this part to see 1, how you install it, 2, you set up your initial first test, 3, how you run this test, and how you can create test groups where you can actually run multiple tests over and over with different providers and models and different versions of the assistant that you can revert to. So let's go. So to install it, you just download this alpha version as it is and enable it, and it's not harder than that. So we have AI agents test here. Just gonna go ahead and install this and click continue. And one important thing that I forgot to say in the introduction, this test suite is currently run completely over UI. This means that you can install the module, you can create the test, you can run the test, everything in the UI. Because the idea is that the person that actually creates the prompts might not necessarily have to be a developer. There might be other roles that are actually better suited for that, and because of that they should be able to set up all their tests, start writing their prompt, and run the test over and over until it actually passes these tests. Then after you have installed it, it's under content. There is a content entity called agent tests, and that's where you start adding your first test. So that's what we're gonna start with. I'm gonna click here, add AI agents test, and say that we want to try the, what should we try, the content type agent. So we're gonna write something directly to the content type agent, where we're gonna ask, is the content type basic page sticky? And then you should add a description, and the important part of the description, because it shows up while you're testing, is to write what is success for this test. So if it fails, someone that just looks at the overview can directly see, like, okay, this didn't succeed because ABC. So in this case, this will ask the content type agent if the basic page is sticky by default. Success should be that it's not sticky by default. At least I think so. Let me check. So one thing that's important to know about these tests is that they, it's under, is that they actually run on the settings, on the state of the website. That's why you can create specific tests for Drupal CMS, but if you need the page to be in a specific state, so you need to have a content type available that is sticky by default, for instance, you should use recipes for this, or set it up like this and run it. Triggering instruction, then, that is the actual instruction that triggers it, that you can see in the overview. So that's not necessarily the chat history that's being sent. That's just so you can verify when looking quickly at the test what triggered this. So we're just going to say, is the basic page sticky by default? Well, so we have chosen the agent. These are the instructions. So there's two ways. You can either add it directly here. That is specifically if you're talking to an agent. So how it works, if you want to think about the architecture of this, where you have agents talking to agents, is that this chatbot, if I were to ask this one would actually ask the content type agent, because this is just the orchestration agent that has many agents under it. So it would ask the content type agent if this basic page is sticky by default, without the whole history. So it's just gonna give one command, and in this case we just want to try the agent. So when you add rules here, what you can set then is you get the list of this agent's tools. So what we know is that this information is not set by default, so it has to use the get content type info. So we give this a label now, and this is also something that you will see in the summary. I will show you that in a second. Get content type info for basic page, and we say this should be run. And we say it can be run at any time, but you can also say one of the loops, so you can say it should be run first. We can actually set that, because it shouldn't run anything else actually. You could say sometimes after the tool. So if you know that, for instance, to create a field, it needs to know how to create the field configuration, and it's using a tool to get this information before it runs the tool that creates the field configuration. And if it doesn't happen in that order, something is wrong. So you could use these rules for that then. And in this case, we're saying that the node type should be exactly page. And the agent then has already in its default information which node types exist, like the label and the data name. And in this case, the data name is page. We can also add the rule that edit content type should not run, because if that runs, something is really wrong. Then it has misunderstood everything. And the same with create content type then. So I just say create content type should not be run. And we have to put this in here. We don't need any history then. What you also can do here is set reset config. And what this does, it takes the config state before the test is run, and after the test run, it resets to this. But you should only do this on tests that actually changes config. And this means, of course, that you can add a test that adds a field to your website and run it over and over and over without having to delete this field all the time. And then we can also test the actual response. The response should say that the page is not sticky, that it is not sticky by default, and so just so you know, on the agent response LLM test, it can be quite strict. So if you just have a general idea what you want, you can even say, you know, be lenient here, or say what, like it can be this or this or this or this. And when we save here, we have created our first test. So what we can do now is run this one, and then we're gonna see the results of actually then sending this to the sending this to the content type agent. Sorry. And what you can see here then, the most important thing is this. You see, it was success. Here's the goal of the test. That's what we put in here. Here you can see the actual textual output from the agent. So you can see the basic page content type is not sticky by default. You can see the conversation here in chat bubbles. This becomes more important when you're running the assistant that controls other agents. You can see the detail tool usage, in what loop something ran. And in this case, we wanted to make sure that this runs in the first loop with the parameter node type set to page. And this is exactly what it does. So this means it works. And here you can see the information that is fed to the LLM for the second loop, where it gives back its answer. And you can see here sticky enabled by default equals false. And that's how it can figure out that, okay, I need to answer that this is not sticky by default. Then there's some agent data. You can see exactly the system prompt with all the default information and everything. You can see the version of it. We stored a hash version of the whole config for every test, meaning that if you do changes that actually makes it worse, you need to go back in history and you don't have that in Git, you can actually find the version via this test and revert it using this. See the tools available, which AI provider we ran, so that's the default AI provider in this case, and some test data. And then you can see the detailed results, that the get content type info parameter node type should be expected is page, actual is page. The get content type info tool should be run, and it did run. So this is expected, and it should run order 1 of 1. You can do comma here, so you can do 1, 2, and it would be success as well because it ran 1 of those. Edit content type did not run, create content type did not run, and the agent response is correct. And it always gives an actual reasoning here, which is important because, as I said, sometimes it can be very strict. So you actually have the correct answer, but it claims you don't have it. So anyway, when we have created something like this, you saw it was pretty cumbersome still to set up a test. I mean, it took 5 minutes or something. What you can do is click duplicate, and then you actually get all the information here, and we can say is the basic page published by default. So we're just gonna run the exact same test, but in this case it's gonna answer if it's published by default. Should be that it's, I think it's published by default. Now I have to check again. Sorry for not knowing this. Yeah, it's published by default, and we have to say the response should say that it is published. And then we have created another test that tests something similar, but it still tests something else. So we can run this as well. So that way you can create tests very easily. But say that now, okay, I've created these tests and I want to test them somewhere else. Well, you can actually export them as a YAML file. And you can just import this. So, oh no, sorry, that's not that YAML file. It's under download. This one. And you get it here again. It won't save until I click save. So what I could try here is, what else does exist? If it's promoted to the first page by default. It's promoted by default. Oh yeah, page promoted. I don't know if that's understandable for the LLM. So So what you can try here also, of course, you can give it very, bad instructions to see if it still understands it. So this it understood actually. I will just show you so you can see that it actually fails as well. That we say, yeah, let's say that this should run on the, no, let's say this should be basic page. That's not the data name of it, right? So we're just gonna run it again just to prove that, or showcase how it looks when it fails. So you see we get a failure and it says why this was a failure, and you can see in more detail here that when the parameter node type should expect the basic page, but we get page instead here. So that is the actual agents test. Now say that we want to run multiple tests. Well, what we have then is the test groups. And a test group is exactly what it sounds like. We can call this test group as content type basic questions. This will ask the content type agent basic questions. And then we can just add all our tests and we can run them in a specific order if it's needed. Oh, I didn't change the label of this, but and then we can set the approval percentage. That's basically if you have 10 tests and 9 out of 10 works and you still feel like, okay, that is for me success, you can set this to 90%, for instance. In this case, we set it to 100%. Then you can also set reset configuration for the whole thing. And this is important if you run tests that are dependent on each other. So if you have a test that first creates the vocabulary, second test that adds this vocabulary to a field, for instance, the first one, the state of the first one has to be there when the second one runs. Otherwise, it wouldn't work, right? So what you can do here then is set reset configuration for the whole run. So you can't necessarily run the second test by itself unless you ran the first test. But what this will do is to make sure that this resets after the whole test run is run as well. Click save. We get information what tests are in there. Click AI agents test group here. We can then click run test group. Can choose the provider, so we can test like does it work with a lesser provider. So this is something that's super interesting. We have started testing that there are other things than just OpenAI and Anthropic that probably will work for this. So we can offer a lot more different providers for Drupal CMS in general, and for Drupal in general and Drupal CMS in specific. Oh, this actually oh no, that was the one I wanted to fail, right? So this failed because it didn't set it to basic page as we set it, and then you can see the total success is this, and it's red because it's under 100%. Can go to the results and see it as well. We see which provider, so you can actually see success percentage for a run between different providers, for instance. And that is then test groups. But what's interesting here then is that same thing as you can do with a single thing, you can export a full group. And that takes us then to the last part of this testing, which is what we have wanted to make sure with, that these agents are at least as good, but they should be better than the old agent framework and the agents being used. So I will just show this. This is how we did it in AI Agents 1.0. I literally took one of these instructions, put it in the chatbot, saw if it worked or not, and took the next one and put it in. And the color means that it's in the same session. So here I would reset it then. But this was cumbersome, of course. Oh, and then it got a success result. 80% of these works, and that's what we were trying to get with AI Agents 1.0. It should at least be 80%. We had around 78 to 85, I think, for the different tests, if I remember correct. What actually turns out interesting now when we have added this framework is that certain of these things actually, well, they gave back a correct answer, but they did not actually work as you would expect them to work. So for instance, with this thing, we're asking it to create a vocabulary with 4 different terms, and then we're asking it later, can you come up with 2 other missing terms? And it makes sense from the LLM's point of view that it sees, okay, the vocabulary was created, 4 terms was created, so probably nothing was created there. So I can base it on that history, and I don't need to do a lookup what terms exist on this vocabulary and just come up with 2 unique new ones. However, in theory, I could have written this in the chatbot, and since we have sessions so you can surf around the website still with the session, I could have created new terms manually that happen to be the same ones. And this we never saw in this test, that this was actually failing. So it was using the history of the chatbot to figure out how to do this. So this was actually, in theory, a failure, for instance. And this is something we can see in the new testing. Anyway, what we have done now then is that we have replicated all these tests into YAML files that are in example directory then under your under this module. So what we can do now is here, I can import the first row of test, that is the mixed bag text. And all of a sudden I have all these tests and I can just start them, run them. And I will just showcase here while it's running what this actually does, because this is, I think, also important to understand the difference between a test that runs directly against the agent. Is the agent doing exactly what it's supposed to do? An assistant where you have a history where it can start getting confused what it's supposed to do. So if we go far in this case and take this one, for instance, ask what fields exist that are custom. This is the 7th that's running in this test. You can see that here chat history is enabled, and you can see we have the whole history of 5 different sessions back and forth, because that's how much we're currently storing in Drupal CMS, where it's asking a lot of questions, and then all of a sudden what fields exist that are on it that are custom, and on it refers to, in this case, then basic page coming back from a system. So here we have history, here we have reset config, and what is also important when you're testing the assistant, then the assistant is testing its thing against other agents, because the assistant is an orchestration agent that has other agents it talks to. So this only works as a project manager that gets an instruction that could be, can you create a vocabulary that's called this and add it to the field that is this. What it should do then is call the taxonomy agent to create the vocabulary, and then call the field agent to connect this vocabulary. So the rules here is that the field agent should ask what custom fields exist on the content type basic page. So it should run anytime, but in the prompt what we do here is verified by LLM, and this works the same way as this LLM test then, but we're just testing it on the parameters that goes into the prompt. So the prompt should ask to list all custom fields that exist on content type basic page. And it also is important that content type agent should not run, a taxonomy agent should not run. And it should at least say that the content, the feature image field exists. So this is basically how our assistant test works in this case. So now we are running it, we have the results here. It actually failed in 2 cases. Let's see what this is. This can be interesting. So what type of field is the content field? Yeah, and here is interesting. So here you can see the conversation. You can follow it. And I will just see here. Content field is being mentioned here. So here is exactly the failure I was talking about, that it's using this information that's being said here to actually know what type of field the content field is. So the answer is correct. You can see the response is actually answering correct. but it's not using the field agent. So actually I will change the prompt to make it even more consistent with calling the agents. It should not base that on the assistant's history. So we found an error here. I will check the other one here as well. This is probably the same thing. Tool content type agent was not used. About us. Okay, so this is actually a total failure. Because here it doesn't have it in the history, it's just making up stuff. So I'm not gonna say it's hallucinating, it's actually using its own knowledge. But in this case, what I really want to know is the exact description that is being set in this case here. So that is another thing I have to check. And that is actually one of the interesting things with this, is that I've been able to run this over and over and over and actually find new errors that are connected to the LLM prompt, not connected to the code, not connected to the tools, but actually the LLM prompt, where we need to rewrite some stuff in the prompt to make it even more consistent. So that is basically where we end. No, so what I wanted to say, we have added all these. We have had, actually I've had one test run that's been 100%. Everything worked. The lowest test percent we have had is 92%. So this is consistently better than the old agent, and we have the possibility to prove it now via this testing tool. And that came, I just realized the last thing that's important, contribution. How can you help? Well, the cool thing what we can do now then, so say these two things actually failed, right? What we can do now, or what you could do in this case, is that you can go into AI settings, go into the Drupal CMS assistant in this case. So I think actually I'm running an old one here, so that's why it's not working. I just imported it. I have another version that's gonna come here, so that's actually why it's working worse here now. Let me actually get that one, because I have it here somewhere, so I don't lose it. So we have the Drupal CMS assistant, and it's system prompt. Well, we probably need to do this. So let's just replace that. There we go. And this, I will just showcase. There should be something where it should say, let me see if I can. Do not try to answer based on your own knowledge and chat history. So this is one of the things that we have improved, and then we can just try to rerun this again. So we can rerun everything. You can of course just rerun the specific parts that you need to rerun as well in this case. And then what I wanted to say with contribution is, one, you can write new tests, because you can just export them as YAML files, give them to us and say like, hey, this thing I tried to do here, it didn't work, we need to fix this. Granted, it is within the reach of what the actual agents can do, of course, then. But even better, you can make it actually, you can make it work as well by changing the agent and see if you can get it to work. So here we had another error actually. Let's see when it's finished running, just to see what it is. this is gonna take some time. So this is something you can help with Drupal CMS agents in general, and other agents that's coming. So our idea is that all the other agents that are coming for Drupal CMS, well, there might be some more in Drupal CMS, but a lot of them will be just recipes that you can install. And then the recipes will also come then with testing files, so you can actually test this for yourself. And it can also be interesting if you're running another provider, another models, maybe you're running something private in that we are not allowed to test, and you can test it. How well does it work in comparison to OpenAI? How well does it work in comparison to Anthropic? So we have tested it with OpenAI and Anthropic. We get between 92 to 100% for OpenAI. Anthropic I just ran 2 times. It's been 93 and 97%. So they are pretty consistent, the great ones. I tried a small Llama model, for instance, and was around 50%, a little bit less than 50%. So yeah, here's one of these things what I talked about before, that it should be lenient. The prompt should ask to set the basic page to not be published when saved. Change the basic page content type so that new content is not published automatically by default, but is sticky by default. Okay, so this is not that it's lenient. This is actually an error where it's using conversation history, because we're asking before this to not make it sticky by default, and it's taking this into this instruction as well. This is a typical error that we wouldn't have seen in the old system, and it's because in the end it is a success, so to speak. The actual end result is a success, but it sucks that it actually does not do exactly how we want it to do, that it shouldn't really care about this old one, because we already have answered that it has done it in this case. So there it might be something we need to fix with the prompt. Anyway, this is the testing framework. Yeah, if you feel free to start using it. And if you use it a lot, all of the modules that we develop, we want the community to, join us. If you feel like this is a thing I want to be a maintainer of, and you have some kind of history of being a maintainer, just get in touch with us. Thank you for watching.